I have a disclaimer before I start. Okay, I'm a pediatric neurologist. I think, the odd one out in the audience over here. In my 30 years of experience, it's really related to my exposure to my patients with different disabilities. I have a first-hand experience with a family member, which I think I've realized by listening to people, most of us have somewhere or the other. And I'm a little biased to neurological conditions, obviously. How I've changed my perspective, my own perspective, over the 30 years from when I started practicing to today, and that's what we're going to cover. The talk has a scientific thread, but with an inclusive outlook. It's my experiences, belief, and practical feedback, so please don't hold me to it at the end of the day. And there's one thing I feel little hesitant about sometimes, is that terminology is moving so rapidly that to be politically correct at all times is becoming a little difficult. So in case I say something wrong, please forgive me. It's not with intent of hurting anybody, but if the word is not the word that you would like to hear, please excuse that. So exclusion versus integration versus inclusion. We're going to run through the beginning very rapidly because this is what you all know. It's putting two or more things together in an effective way is your integration, and inclusion, the act of including someone or something as a part. Now, as you know carefully, as you see carefully, she's asked, what would you like to know? Would you like to be heard as challenged, disabled, or whatever? He says, why don't you just call me Joe? You get it? That's what it is. He just wants to be who he is. And it says the best way to address a person is to call them what the parent calls them. Because the way a mother calls her child is usually the way the child would like to be called always. Now, the different forms of exclusion, as you can see it's from the physical disability to women, to refugees, migrants, minorities, foreign cultures, abnormal in whatever way you may think a person is abnormal. There's physical and social barriers, and what are the effects of the exclusion that we have. Now, from the spectrum of a pediatric neurologist, what do I see? We divide our development into 4 categories: gross motor, fine motor, social, and communication. That is the way the brain develops over the first few decades of life. So when you're looking at communication, for that matter, is those who have hearing, cognitive issues, cerebral palsy, autism spectrum disorder. Gross motor has all the physical stuff. You have soft neurological children who have syndromes, who have hypotonia, who have learned few other things with epilepsy as well, and the social behaviors as well. A large amount of discrimination is slowly coming in because of social media. So what is visible to us is very obvious. There's a whole lot of invisible stuff which is happening in the brain, which are neurotransmitters, which is also part of my space. But what we are realizing is that social media and electronics is today adding a third dimension to an inclusive environment. And then you have diversity, equity, and inclusion, which are the logo or the dictum of what we are doing today is diversity of race, ethnicity, country, origin, socioeconomic status, sex, sexuality, gender, health equality, and inclusion. And I'm not going to go into the policies. So what are the key aspects? There's educational inclusion, psychosocial inclusion, family, cultural, and therapeutic. And I'm going to now touch upon the therapeutic aspects of inclusion. So when you do therapeutic approach, what are the different things? Different types are applied. You have cognitive, or you have behavior therapy, play therapy, occupation, physiotherapy, speech therapy. And the aim is to make these therapies accessible for parents and children so that they could get the best for their child. So these are what you have, the conventional therapies, which we are going to run through. That's your physiotherapy that you can see. And if I just had to ask you one, out of all these pictures, which one do you think is the child is going to learn and maximize the most? Anybody? In which picture do you think he would be or she would be most motivated to learn or most able to incorporate what is being? Why top left? Why top left? So it's variable. I agree, it depends on the needs of the child. But the bottom left one here, where the child is in a natural environment, in a play area, where there are other children playing and someone is working with him on a swing or a slide or something, as against working on a ball or something, you'll see with science that working in the open, working in nature, working outside has better therapeutic outcomes. So we have occupational therapy, we have sensory integration, you have children who need all the different senses, and this is all happening routinely just now. And then you have speech therapy and oromotor therapy, where children who have hearing assessments, oromotor concerns, ASD features, all of them go for different forms of speech, verbal and non-verbal communication. You have orthotics, which are aids which are used to make them more able. From standing, you can see the boy who's out in the open seems to be the happiest. The boy who's playing a standing frame and playing a game is so focused and dedicated. And then you have robotics, which is the new thing which is there to make, using technology to try and see that you get the best for the child. So what are the non-conventional therapies? Okay, and I had Dinaz. Where were you, Dinaz? Yeah, Dinaz, who pulled me up today and said, Anita, you write all this long things of things for people to do, and now the parents are this. So I'm going to explain a little on that. So we all know the 5 Fs which are there, and we know that it's not the 5 Fs that important. The important is the mindset which has changed. From providing therapy for a child, we have to start looking at the long-term picture for this child. We have to encourage the parent to start at a young age to look at the long-term picture. Where do you see your child when he's 20 or 30 years of age? Where would you want him to be? He needs to be guided in that uniform direction till he reaches that point. So how does he get there? He needs to be physically fit. He needs to have functionality. That's what we're working on with the therapies. There's friends, there's families, there's fun, and there's future. Okay, so you've got your 5 and the future is your 6F. So the single most important driving point is the future. Imagine where you would want your child to be 20 years down the line and see how you can reach that point. So this is really my prescription when I write. So you don't blame Dinaz when she sees this long list of things that I put. I put it for 2 reasons. One, you never know if they will come back again. So I want to give them the vision of looking at their child in a different way from the way they come to you. So the normal is the physio with orthosis, occupation with sensory integration, speech, non-verbal, verbal. I keep focusing on non-verbal because there are many therapists who are still fixated on only verbal, and if you do non-verbal, they will never talk, and all misconceptions, please. And don't give these misconceptions to parents because then they don't want to try anything else. Behavior therapy, CBT, I tend to do neurodevelopmental assessment in most of my kids for simple reason. I want to know their strengths and weaknesses. The agenda at the end of the day is not to know the weakness. We all have weaknesses, each and every one of us here. But we all have strengths. And if we can find that strength in the child from a young age, parent knows what to work on from the weakness to support it, but what to work double hard is on the strength so that he goes ahead of his peers or the others in that. So there's something that he gets tapped on his back every day and makes him feel good with himself. We do x-rays and send for orthopedic. We do a dental assessment. Please do not ignore the teeth. It's a very integral and important part of the care of a child. Eye checkups once a year. Dental and ophthal have to happen once a year irrespective. Biochemistry to see I'm not missing some simple stuff like vitamin D, B12, etc. Genetic assessment, it's the new thing on the block, but that's a different topic totally. And counseling. And then I draw an arrow and I say, this is conventional therapy. And this is what you should start the first few years of your child's life with. And the aim of this therapy is not what it can do so much for the child as it is what it's doing to the parent. I want that parent to learn all this. The parent at the end of the day is the primary therapist, multidisciplinary therapist for that child. There will be no better therapist. I'm sorry to offend any of y'all, but there is no better therapist for a child than its parent. And if that mom learns the speech, the OT, the physio, the everything which is relevant to her child, that's more than enough that's needed. So they are there to guide you, to show you the correct posture, the correct form, the correct way to do it, because they are not educated that way. But at the end of the day, it's the parent who has to do it. 35 minutes, 45 minutes, twice a week or thrice a week by the therapist. We have 24 hours of the day, 7 days a week. That mom can do so much. And that dad is not allowed to get dinner until he has done 1 hour of therapy with his kids. I swear, you have to see the face of the expression on the mother's face when I say that. It's like, wow, doctor, how did you think of that? It's like I say it to everybody, but it's the same expression everywhere, because you need to enforce that this is a family responsibility. This is not a one-parent responsibility. So we really say, Dad, in the morning before you go to work, at night before you sleep, or before you have dinner, you have to. It doesn't have to be therapy. It can be just taking him to the park, go for a walk, put him on the bike, take him for a ride on the scooter or the cycle. It's the interaction, it's the socializing which makes the difference. So once you've done these, how often, you all must be knowing that many children after a certain age will say they don't want to go for therapy. Who wants to go to a place where you see people with other abnormalities or disabilities and remind yourself every day that I am negative, that I'm defective in some way? What do you want to do? You want to go down and play with your friends who are doing kho-kho, kabaddi and sakli and lock and key and whatever it is. So don't wait for the day when he walks, he sits, he talks, etc. to introduce him to that. That starts right from the beginning, from the time he's small. Yes, it will be tough, and there will be that someone who will say something negative to you, and that mom will feel very offended and upset, etc. But strengthen, toughen yourself, give her the power and the thing to believe that what she's doing is right, and not to hide at home with her child, but to take him out everywhere. Aquatherapy is not just swimming. It has a whole load of benefits that go. It's warm water body, small pool. It's with an occupational therapist usually. There's a special training for it. And you know that you walk much better and you move much easier in water than you do on land because of the gravity and the resistance of water. Music therapy, extracurricular, swimming, football, cycling, skating, running. I write all this. But the aim is find what's near your house. Find the one that suits your budget. Find the teacher who is going to support your child without making you feel, that your kid can't do this or he can't run or he's so poorly coordinated. So choose what suits you. But honestly, if you ask me, by far swimming is the best. Dance therapy, art-based therapy, animal therapy, normal schooling till as long as possible. I do agree that sometimes you do need to put them. So I tell them normal schooling with a shadow, please take the shadow. Many parents don't want to take the shadow. Take the shadow. It makes the child in a better space. But when you reach that point, because our education system does not take you out till 8th standard. So some kids will stay till 8 till the school asks you to leave, and some of the teachers will start putting pressure before. When you reach the point where your child's confidence is getting hit because of the way students, teachers, or other people are interfering in his life, that's the point to change your school to an appropriate school. Be it a slow learner, be it special, be whatever it is. Do not let the child lose his confidence before you shift him to another space. And speech and drama, that's a lovely way to do speech. Just put him in speech and he may not talk for some time, but slowly by listening to everyone he will. Storytelling, and a very integral part, free play. What do you remember of your childhood? I remember running around my building, chasing my friends and having fun and, whatever little childhood games we played at that time. Free play. You have only one childhood. Don't kill it with your anxiety or the mother's anxiety to do the best for her child. That she means well, but she needs to be guided. So I think I've gone through all this. Aim of the therapy is what's normal, start now. Therapy is guide, empower, learn and replicate. Seek support and guidance. Sometimes parents need help, support. Ask them, do you want to see a counselor? Should I recommend you somebody? They need help. Okay, the magic is the parent. So see that they are empowered and in a good space, because only then will the child benefit. Don't get upset by remarks from others. Remember, you were ignorant yourself. The parent has always been ignorant themselves till they got a child like this. And it's only then that your eyes got open. So if someone says something, they're not saying it to hurt you. They're saying it out of ignorance. Make the effort to explain, or just grow a thick skin. It's sad, but yes. Expose your child to everyone you would have if he were normal or if he were neurotypical. Don't make exceptions that he can't do this because he does this. Holidays are fun. They love holidays. And most parents will tell me after, doctor, can we go for a holiday? I say, why haven't you? No, we've not gone in the last 5 years. We're waiting for him to do this. Or don't do that. Start from the beginning. They love space. And you'll find the best behavior comes when they're out on holiday in open spaces. See what they can do and expand on it. Identify their strengths. Don't let that become a weakness. We all have strengths and weaknesses. You get it? And if you just focus on his weakness and you don't do his education or his intellect or whatever is good, his strength is also going to become a weakness one day. You get it? Parents are so fixed on those two legs. I cannot tell you that when my child walks, doctor, then I will do everything. So please, or when he talks, if it's autism or something, it's when he talks. Childhood comes but one. Do not ignore the sibling, because that sibling is maybe the most important connector in that family. The sibling is the best therapist for the child. The sibling is going to be the future caregiver for this child. And if you ignore them and you build resentment, it's going to have lots of repercussions down the line. So it's not the fault of the sibling that he came or she came special. Give them their equal share of time so that they learn to love and care and look out for the child just as much as they would themselves. So these are pictures of music therapy. You can see that. Can we shut this light? Okay, because the glare is too much. Okay, so these are lovely pictures of different forms of music therapy. I'm not going to for lack of time. That's the person I refer for my music therapy. She talks about how she does one-on-one sessions, she does group sessions, and she does parent-child sessions, where they learn different forms of music and how it releases certain anxieties, their speech improves and they become better. And there's science and evidence for everything. Okay, so there's music therapy for pediatric health. Even for children as bad as brain tumors, music is supposed to benefit. So there are centers in the brain which get activated when you do certain activities. And you do realize that our movements and activities are a combination of different neurotransmitters. So when one neurotransmitter gets released, which has a positive effect on the body, or releases dopamine, which gives you the feeling of gratification, happiness, all that, that's what we are looking for. We are looking to find those things that release more of those chemicals that make us feel good so that I believe I can do. And if I believe I can do, trust me, I can do. Okay, so that's a little bit on music therapy and how she teaches it to these. Now this child has severe autism. She doesn't talk much at all. But you see, when you made the song, you can see the monotonous sing in the voice. But she loves her session, and I have to block her eyes, but otherwise she makes beautiful contact with the teacher because she wants to please the teacher by singing nicely. Dance therapy. I cannot tell you how therapeutic dance is. It's a combination of music and occupational therapy. So I hate to say it, but as you grow older, you won't need occupational therapy. You do it in the beginning years. You learn it. You teach the parent. When he's 12, 13, 14, why go to OT? Just go for a dance session. And you've got it, you've learned it all, you've done the coordination, and you're getting the happy endorphins that come with that. So there's ample evidence to show you that dance helps a lot in persons. There's even a journal of dance therapy, the American Journal of Dance Therapy, indicating how important. We do music therapy for Parkinson's disease, music therapy for Alzheimer's, music therapy for dementia, for patients with, it's done in adults as well as in children. So dance, music and movement, these are the different therapies which are very therapeutic. I would strongly recommend you try and source people near your place or near your center till you can start referring. So this was a story that I heard when I went for the first American Academy of Cerebral Palsy and Development Medicine 2008, which was at Atlanta. And the keynote speaker, the conference theme was the lifespan, cerebral palsy lifespan. And the keynote speaker was a neurologist from Stanford. And she was diplegic, and she gave us her story and her life, and she told us how her mother, and she showed us pictures of her therapy. They used to put you on ice at one time. She was lying on a block of ice, and those were the therapeutic measures which were done at that time. And like every parent, the parent did everything under the sun to help them. And she said, I just didn't enjoy, I struggled until I reached college, and I met a boy who introduced me and said, let's go for a dance session. That became her boyfriend down the line, and who she married eventually. And she said, with that dance session, I became a different person. So she just learned to, she wasn't obviously the best dancer, but the ability to think that I can do what other people could do and then integrate was the main thing. So you see this lovely picture. I don't know if it can show this is from Jai Vakil, this little chap out here gyrating and hitting his hips with Farah Khan. But the most important thing is, see the energy in his smile, see the energy in his eyes. Look at the love and the pleasure that he's getting. And this is 10 therapy sessions done in half an hour. You get it? It's literally like that. Then you have paint therapy, so I'm not going to go into all of them. Another very important one is aqua therapy. We won't go through the videos of that. There's ample evidence to work on aqua therapy. We run out? 5 minutes, yeah. Aqua therapy, different mechanisms, swimming and children. And I would like you to hear this because I think
when we think of therapy, we often focus on goals, mobility, strength, function. But with children, especially those with disabilities, there's something which is much more profound about water. That is the joy of movement. In water, children experience freedom that they rarely find anywhere else. Regardless of the severity of their disability, water offers a medium where movement isn't a struggle. It is fun, it is spontaneous, it is liberating. It is a place where therapy transforms into play, where the child can be himself or herself, where they are not limited or not defined by their limitations, but by possibilities. Far beyond therapy outcomes, aquatic experiences nurture something deeper, which is a lifelong legacy of participation. Water becomes a place where they can express their physical selves with ease and confidence, where health is experienced not as a task, but as a natural outcome of joyful engagement.
So basically, just to tell, sorry, I won't go, but here you see the father learning the therapy. Okay, so again, everything is parent-based. The parent has to become part of the whole process. Because when this kid becomes 20, 30, 40, if she can go into a swimming pool every day and swim for half an hour, she's done her therapy for life. Sport is another very big part. Okay, and exercising, I've got all these activities, all these slides here, but the most important one I want to show is exercising is good for the brain, but exercising outside is found to be potentially better. So in the open air, in a natural environment, it's the best thing. Animal therapy. Okay, I know it's long. When I add animal, people think I'm nuts over there, and I say it's not for now, it's for later. Let you learn to cope with the child first, then you get the dog as well into the picture. But imagine coming home and you have endless love every day, irrespective of how bad your day was at work, or how angry mommy is today or daddy is yesterday. You know that your dog is there for you. So there's a lot of sensory as well as other therapeutic benefits with that. And this is someone who does culinary. They do cooking for children with disability. And you have to see the joy when they make sev puri, batata puri, pani puri and serve it to you at a different. Virtual reality therapy. So this is where we are moving. And there's little evidence, but it's becoming better that for certain conditions, you can improve significantly eye-hand coordination, visual-spatial skills, etc. And some children who can't go out, if I can play the Wii, I think Deepti's son does it. His son started this, her son started this. They put the Wii in the school and the children play Wii. They're the thrill that I can play tennis, which he would never be able to do in real life if he had to go on a court. So that's the visual reality, and a very important part which Madam was discussing with me was adaptations. We need to learn this, whether it's in the home environment, the school, or the community. We are always after the government for the community, but we have to teach them home and school. See that they become independent at any cost. Toileting, feeding, clothing, bathing. Mobility is obviously dependent, but whatever we can, adjust the house, but don't do it for the child. Let him do it on his own. And these are some of the lovely, they say the 24 top disability company startups in 2024. I'm sure you can't read them because it's too far and small, but I'm happy to give the presentation if anyone needs it. And you can look into any of these as we go. And the last bit is our parents, siblings, and teachers. I've already expressed that to you. The magic wand is the parent. The teachers, we've discussed and described today how a teacher can help a child. It's immense. I have Duchenne's muscular dystrophy. They grow up with their friends all their life, and at 10 or 11, they stop walking, they're in a wheelchair. By then, the classroom has moved to the third floor because they've become big boys. And you have schools who say sorry. So we say, ask them to bring the classroom down to the first ground floor. No, we won't do that. Ask them to use the lift. No, if they're firstly, there has to be a lift. If not even, sometimes no, it's policy of the school that you can't use it. So you have to understand, we have to make these people aware to be a little more sensitive and educational institute. And this was one of the other Jai Vakil pictures. This is what inclusion is. It's not being part. We are in a special school, okay. But the feeling that comes that I belong, this is really what inclusion is. So in conclusion, the concept of inclusion isn't about what they can achieve or how they function. It's about us and how we look at them. We mean society, the whole community, and how we can change our lens to look at them as one of us. And when I say us, I know you are all part of it, but I mean the entire public space. Identify and promote the strengths of each of them. The core of success lies in the ability to believe in oneself. Confidence and happiness are the two quotients. Parents and family are the magic one, not us, not us. It's really, yes, teachers have a huge role to play. Schools have a huge role to play, but the magic is really the parents. And life is tough for all of us. This is how I approach it. It's more tough for them as well. Don't overprotect the children. Let them learn on their own. Let them fall. Let them hurt themselves. Let them pick themselves up. Give them the strength to pick themselves up and to fight on for a happy space. And I think the last one is, these are all the different quotes that I could get. I like the last one. The only disability in life is a bad attitude. And there is no greater disability in society than the inability to see a person as more. So I think the disability really lies with us. Okay, it's we who are disabled and not on them. And this is, I think, the take home of, again, as I said, the happiness of just being part of an everyday normal life. Thank you. I overstepped.